Okay. Hi, this is Eric. Welcome to the Wolves Den podcast. So I want to kind of talk about Tactical Inc. and Tactical Canines and how I got started with these both businesses. So first and foremost, I was a fugitive recovery agent. I was a bounty hunter for 5 years. And prior to be a bounty hunter in the state of California, I had worked in juvenile probation part-time in one of the counties here in California. And prior to that, I was a gang prevention specialist for a city in here in California. So with the jobs I've held, I've seen some craziness. I've seen some deep, deep stuff from arresting criminals to seeing people who were victims of street violence, of gang violence, people who have been shot, visiting people in the hospital from stab wounds. Um, so, I mean, I've seen it all and hope to share some of my stories with you in the future. So I kind of want to get into this podcast on how Tactical Inc. started. So what Tactical Inc. started was I was working as a fugitive recovery agent, the bounty hunter job. And I was out in the field with my partner. So one day we were talking about retirement because we kind of knew that we couldn't chase everybody for so many years. Like we'd eventually just get tired of chasing fugitives, people who are wanted out on bail. So we started talking about what we should do for our next steps. And I told them, I kind of wanted to start a t-shirt company because growing up in my childhood, I kind of was interested in graffiti art. I did graffiti art in high school. So it's just always kind of been a part of my life, the art. So I came up with his name, told him I wanted to be called Tactical Inc. And he looked at me and he said, "You're going to call it what?" And I said, "I'm going to call it Tactical Inc." He means like tattoo ink, like INK. And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Nah, I think you should call it Tactical Inc. INC for like incorporation or something like that." And I looked at him, "Nah, man." Like I explained to him, I said, "You know what? Working all these jobs, that working out in the field or just working in a job where you have to wear a uniform, like you're always has policy how you should cover up your tattoos." So kind of wanted to develop something that was going to be relatable to the fields, and we don't have to like be proud of our artwork and put some of my ideas and artwork out in the field, or put my ideas and artwork out on these t-shirts. So he's like, "Oh, that's cool, man." And I told him about this artwork I was going to put out on these t-shirts and kind of, develop my own style of stuff that we see and just come up with different slogans and different. I really didn't know where it was going at the time. I just knew I just wanted to create art and somehow make a t-shirt company, hopefully land on the beach in Venice and sell my shirts or something. But I didn't know where it was going. So fast forward, I found out a year later my wife ended up pregnant, and so prior to that, she ended up pregnant anyhow. So during that pregnancy, she everything was going okay. Around Christmas time, it was 2019. I was working a lot, just out in the field, just consistently busy, all through the state of California, up and down the Bay Area, just arresting some of the fugitives that were on bail. So I was constantly busy, and I decided to take, some time off for my wife's pregnancy. So I did, and then my wife, she went into labor, and when she went into labor, it's kind of hard to talk about, but so when she went into labor, we get to the hospital. It was Christmas Day, and we were in and out of the hospital a couple times before that. She thought she was going to go into labor. So Christmas Day, she goes into labor, and they administered an epidural and to all the stuff that she needed for the labor, the pain. And during that time, her doctor was in and out. So we saw different doctors, and she was having a hard time with the baby. The baby wasn't coming out. And so they told us the baby needs to come out, or the baby can catch fever, it could get really sick, or it could even be worse, or your wife can get worse too. So they rushed my wife into the emergency room. They did a C-section on her, and they rushed me out of the hospital room. And I remember holding my baby. So they rushed me out of the hospital room and with the baby. And I'm wondering, where's my wife? My wife was nowhere to be. Like, my wife was she was in this room. So I'm like, where's my wife? Like, where is she at? How come she's not coming out? And so I started getting frustrated with the doctors. So the doctors come over and they're like, everything's going to be okay. Everything's all right. I'm like, where's my wife at? And they're like, well, we had a little bit of a trouble, some issues, but everything's going to be okay. So they bring my wife out. Finally, I'm holding the baby. So my wife, I put the baby with my wife. My wife was so tired. I could see her turning pale. They rush us back. They bring us back to our room where we're staying at. And, the doctors are in and out. The anesthesiologist is in and out. He's coming to check on us. And I know something's wrong. I can feel it in my heart. Something's wrong. So I start talking to the doctor, and I can still see my wife, and she's looking pale, and then they're doing blood counts. They're saying that her count's kind of whatever's going on with the blood work, that it's low. So we find out that my wife is losing blood. So for 6 hours, my wife was in this hospital bed losing blood, and she's fighting for her life. And here I am. I have this newborn baby, and I'm dealing with all the other stress of work. So I'm stressed out. Thank God there was a doctor that came in and finally started to treat my wife and get her fixed up. So it was really hard at that time because I had to get back to work after my wife got out of the hospital, and my wife needed my care. She needed me to take care of her. So I ended up going back to work for a little bit and taking care of my wife. So I made a decision that I could no longer do this job, any of the jobs that I could do, because it started playing a mental game on me. Just maybe it was a childhood trauma that I had. Maybe it was that all the stuff that I seen working out in the field on the streets. Maybe it was just my wife, just almost losing her. So I just needed a break. I knew I needed a break. I knew I needed just to relax, get my head together. So a year later, we come to find out everything's okay. She's recovered. The baby's healthy, and COVID hits. So a couple months later, actually, COVID hits, and I keep getting this phone call from my partners, and my wife tells me, don't answer it. So I didn't answer it. And I found out that my partner that I worked with, I told a t-shirt company about, after Christmas, he actually ended up committing suicide. So he committed suicide, and I just lost it. I mean, it was somebody who was like a brother to me. We went through a lot. Just being out on the streets for 5 years, working as bounty hunters. Some people might think it's a big deal, but it kind of is a big deal for us because we were kind of proud of what we did. I mean, it was a tough job, and knowing that someone has your back out there, we don't, working as a bounty hunter, you don't get the support 100% of the time. When you're going to a home and you're looking for a fugitive, you don't get the support for the local PD sometimes, the local police department. Sometimes you don't get that support, and sometimes you do. But sometimes you just have that other person you got to depend on. Being a bounty hunter, you're not a cop. You're not a police officer. You're a fugitive recovery agent. You're non-law enforcement. You're working for a bail bonds company who's hiring or contracting you to find a fugitive and put them back into custody because they missed court. Right? There's a warrant out for their arrest. So it's your job to bring them back to custody safely. Right? And there's requirements that you have to go through the state of California to become a bounty hunter. And you definitely can't have any felonies because you can get in trouble if you have a felony. You try to work as a bounty hunter, right? You can't. We carry actual firearms. We go through training courses to carry our basic firearms, and we constantly are at the range practicing. God forbid that ever happens where we have to use a firearm. So That's the number one thing is safety when you're out there, because you don't have anyone else that's coming to save you if you're trapped in a home. If someone's shooting at you, you might have, PD eventually coming out to help you, but sometimes you don't. That's the risk you take as being a bounty hunter. And the way we were paid, we weren't paid by catching on commission. We were actually paid a salary. So we were paid a salary to do our job. We actually worked for an investigation firm that paid us a salary to go out there and look for these fugitives that were wanted on bail. So going back to that, my partner, he was like a brother to me. We went through a lot. We worked in different cities a lot. We worked in different towns. We were all up and down the state. We went after some heavy hitters that were fugitives, that were out on bail. And, we went through a lot together. And when he actually committed suicide and I found out about it, it broke me. It really hurt me. So I kind of went into a dark space, and I didn't know how to come out of that dark space. And it was just a really tough year. I lost, a year later, I lost my uncle to suicide. He was actually working in the VTA at the time in San Jose, and a shooting happened, and my uncle was a witness to the shooting, and he was inside working at the VTA center from what I hear. And I had dinner with him the night before he committed suicide. My dad was in the hospital. My biological dad, who I didn't grow up with, was in the hospital fighting for his life because he overdosed on drugs and he was homeless. So here I am as this guy who went through rescuing fugitives, who worked all these other jobs, and I'm losing everybody. So I just went into a dark place. Finally got help and met some really cool people in the dog world. Some really cool people that were there for me, because it started getting dark, and the dogs just kind of turned my life around, man. Like, I remember being a bounty hunter and just being out there on the field, and I would see all these dogs just come out for the canine units. Sometimes the canine units would come out, and I'd be so intrigued. When I was like 15 years old, I was a police cadet. I was a police explorer at 15, and I went to this little academy they had down in San Diego, and I remember them bringing the police canine dogs out, and we actually got to train with them. And it was super cool. It was intriguing to me, like, to really see these dogs and what they can do and how they can work. It was super awesome, right? Like, it was just something that I fell in love with. And as a kid, I would always find dogs, rescue them, and bring them home, or call the classifieds and then bring them home, right? And my mom would get super mad, like, having all these dogs come to the house. And I remember as a child, my biological dad, he would have, these pit bulls. We had a pit bull named Bear, and Bear was this vicious pit bull that my dad had raised. He would feed him steaks, and Bear was like this killer dog, right? Bear actually attacked me one time, and I didn't get fear from dogs after that. I wasn't afraid of dogs. I just knew that this dog had attacked me. So just growing up, I had all these dogs, and it was always pit bulls. Always just rescue these pit bulls for some reason. Maybe they reminded me of myself growing up, or something, where nobody wanted anything to do with them. So just raising them and having these dogs around me, meeting people in the dog world that were part of protection sports and American Shih Tzu, and seeing all them. And I actually interned under someone who was a decoy and a dog trainer. So I got to intern with him, and it was super cool because I got to work all these dogs and really catch these dogs and figure out how they really work. And it took my mind to a different place. It brought that adrenaline back in me. It started lighting that fire in me, being this intern and working with dogs. And then I started working with my own dogs, and then my dogs started becoming protection dogs. Then I just started getting more deeper with dogs and started working more with dogs. And it was a lot of dogs that I was working. And so right before getting into the dog world, I decided to launch Tactical Inc. somewhere between the line there. I don't remember the dates. So I launched Tactical Inc. and I was making T-shirts for people in the dog world. I bought a machine that would print vinyl. Started doing some of my artwork off that, and started using art for therapy and to help me go through what I was going through. And some of the stuff that you see on Tactical Inc. was really dark because that's the dark phase I was going through at that time. So I just started putting this art together. When I was doing vinyl shirts and printing them and making shirts for dog companies and sending them out to people. So I had to have, my living room was full of boxes of just T-shirts I was making. I got overwhelmed. So I said, how can I actually reduce this and start focusing more on my dogs? Because dogs is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I didn't know I had a talent or a gift working with dogs until I started my own business and really getting out there. So I ended up finding some other artists that were able to work with me and just shooting them my ideas. And then they started drawing up more ideas and we started communicating together. And that's some of the work you see. It's some of the ideas that we're coming together, putting together to develop Tactical Inc. And then hosting events. We host events for Tactical Inc. So, if you got a dog that's in the dog world and that's a protection dog and you want to get the dog tested, sometimes we have these events that you come out and, we put the dogs to the test in a real world situation, real world life, and we'll have decoys come out. And our decoys are all paid. We pay our decoys that come out and work these dogs and for our events that we host. And we're trying to grow and have more dog events. So that's pretty much how Tactical Inc. and Tactical Canines came about, our dog training business. And we've been just hitting it hard and growing from there as far as how we can grow. But this has really helped me become a better person, working with dogs and then also expressing my artwork and the loss of my loved ones and the people, my friends that I've lost throughout the years. It's just helped me recover and be a better man, be a better father, a better person. So that's pretty much how we started. So thank you for tuning in to our podcast. Stay tuned for our next podcast, and we're going to have more stories for you, more guests, and then we'll have also Charles join in on us, the man behind the camera. All right? Thank you guys, and have a good night.